Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel hope for some relief on their AGR dues after the Supreme Court agrees to hear a curative petition. While Vodafone Idea owes 70,000 crores, Bharti's dues stand at around 36,000 crores. Separately, brokerages bet big on Bharti Hexacom. Welcome to Markets Forward, your go-to show where we aim to get you updated on what went on in today's trading session and gear you up for the next session as well. I'm Marshall Sousa and joining me today, Reema Tendulkar. Hey, Reema.
Hi, so we'll dissect the markets for you in the next 20 minutes with all the big news, key developments in the Lal Street, the top corporate voices and the events to track ahead. But first, the day's market action. The end was absolutely flat, but not before making new records in the morning. Well,
it was a day of consolidation, Reema. You know, we started off trade thinking that maybe we'll make a dash closer to around the 25,000 odd mark, but we ended with mild gains of closer around 15 points odd. Financials, they were the problem pocket today, and they had a technical factor as well that was playing out, because today it was the weekly expiry for the Nifty Bank as well as the Nifty Financial Services Index. And from both of them, well, you had a couple of stocks that were lower. Shriram Finance, well, that stock did see some selling, and Kotak Mahindra Bank as well was a little under the weather in today's trading session. So both of them from the Nifty pack were lower. But, you know, on Friday's trading session, you had Oil India that did well. Yesterday, that was on Monday, you had ONGC, and today it was a turn of Coal India. Coal India got a bit of a booster shot because you had Phillip Capital that came out with a positive note, but that in fact was up by close to 3%, and HUL has made a good comeback. It was hovering around the 2200 odd mark just a month or so ago. And from there, it's seen a good rally. Remember, it's been a big underperformer in the last few years, but that's showing signs that it wants to come back into the game. The advanced decline ratio as well will tell you the picture, because when we started off trade, you had two stocks that were advancing for one stock that was declining. By the time you wound up, in fact, that ended pat in the middle, pretty much even Stevens between both of them. What else, Reema?
Well, the mid-cap index also ended absolutely flat, right? Down less than 1 point. So that gives you an indication of how the close was. You know, full consolidation. In the frontline pack, it was Reliance Industries which dragged the market, as Nigel pointed out. But you had a handful of gainers coming in the form of IT names. So Infosys came in for buying ahead of numbers on Thursday. LTI Mindtree was higher. Consumption names, HUL was of course one of the big movers, but Tata Consumer, Nestle, Britannia moved up. Bharti Airtel in the telecom pack also inching up. And sectorally, if you had to look at the gainers, it was real estate, FMCG and IT. But markets did close absolutely flat. The high on the Nifty today was a record of 24,661. We finally end above 24,600, but intraday we did go below the 24,600 mark, and the mid-cap index too lost about 0.5% from the top. Let's tell you what we have for you on our show today. We start with the top movers and shakers of the day. Vivek is going to be with us. Bajaj Auto takes the spotlight, beats estimates in Q1. The telecom sector also in focus with Bharti Airtel and Vodafone Idea, hopeful of some relief. And CNBC-TV18's popular segment, D Street Chatter, on the show. And on Nimesh's radar today is Zomato. And finally, the key market events to watch out for to prepare you for tomorrow. But the first segment of the day are the top movers and shakers with Vivek. Vivek.
Thank you so much for that. You know, like you mentioned, a very choppy trading session is what we witnessed, especially in the second half. We did see quite a bit of selling pressure in some of the large cap names. Which are the first set of stocks that actually managed to do quite well? It's the trend that's continued. The entire consumption pack, the FMCG stocks continued to shine. HUL, in fact, the top Nifty gainer almost 2.5% higher today. The other set of stocks that did quite well after HDFC Life's good set of results, all of the life insurance stocks did quite well. And, you know, in fact, even the general insurance, you saw GICRE also do quite well in the session today. Now, in the FNO pack, one particular stock that stood out was actually Industar. The telecom pack was in focus on the back of news flow, but Industar too higher by almost 2.5% in today's trading session. Sticking with the telecom pack, Bharti Hexacom, you know, saw two brokerages initiating coverage on this particular name. Stock ended higher by almost 7%. So large mover as far as the broader end of the markets was concerned. Emphasis was another stock that was in focus. The stock, especially in the last hour of the trading session, higher by almost 2%. And Century Textile, after a good set of results, this particular stock too ended higher by almost 5%. On the other side, the top Nifty laggard today was actually a pharma stock. That was Dr. Reddy. IIFL came out with a fresh note, after looking at the annual report, and they continue to maintain a reduced rating on the stock, ended lower by almost 2%. HDFC AMC, this particular stock actually started off the day on a strong foot, but ended lower by almost 2.5% lower. And Kotak Mahindra Bank today was amongst the top laggard as far as the banking pack was concerned, ended lower by over 2% today.
Thanks for that, Vivek, for giving us that neat wrap of what went on in today's trading session. Well, let's analyze trade then today. To help us out, we have Bala of Cash Secures who joins us, as well as Sudip Bandyopadhyay of Inditrade Capital. Hi, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining in. Well, Jay, you go first. Tell us about the Nifty Bank. That seems to be facing resistance at around that 52,800 mark, but it's still defending the 20-day MA. How do you see that one shaping up?
That's right, Nigel. See, the Nifty banking sector is hitting a very long-term trend line from the post-financial crisis highs of 2010. So that's the reason why it's facing resistance. It's a very strong resistance, and it's put a stop on the movements of the sector in 2014, 18, COVID, just pre-COVID highs, and 2022. So it's facing an important resistance at 54,000, 55,000. And as long as the State Bank can hold above 820, and as ICICI can hold about 1179, I think there won't be that much risk. But if these levels were given for the sector, that'll have a very important bearing for the sector as well as the overall markets. So that's what is the takeaway for the banking sector.
Let's get to Bajaj Auto. The stock at one point post numbers moved up 2%, but ultimately ended just up close to about 0.5%. So in the last 1 hour or so, profit booking did set in, but the Q1 numbers look pretty good. Sudarshan joins in with the details. Sudarshan.
So Bajaj Auto has kick-started earnings for auto sector, and the numbers for the first quarter FY25 were higher than estimates and even higher year on year. And these numbers were led by healthy volumes and better realizations. Volume growth has come in line. It's up 7% YOY at 11.02 lakh units, and realizations were higher than estimates. It saw a growth of 8% to rupees 1.10 lakh. Now talking about the headline numbers, profit has increased 19%, revenue was up 16%. It was supported by favorable mix. And operating front, EBITDA has risen 24%, margin has increased by 120 bips to more than 20%. And company says better realization and cost reduction have added the margin in the first quarter. Now talking about the segments, domestic business has registered double-digit growth for 9 successive quarters. Exports revenue have seen double-digit growth, and Latin America has posted its highest ever quarterly revenue. In two-wheelers, Pulsar continues to see double-digit growth, and company has sold more than 19,000 units of Triumph in the first quarter. In three-wheelers, volume growth was in double digits for 4 consecutive quarters. So overall, it was a healthy set of numbers for Bajaj Auto with beat on most of the parameters.
Thank you very much for that. There is a conference call scheduled at 6:30 p.m. Sudip, comment on Bajaj Auto. What explains that little bit of profit booking that we saw in Bajaj Auto, in the last 1 hour? Is it just the fact that the stock has run up too much? It's gotten re-rating, 40% gain year to date. And what would be the key things you would, want to hear from the management in the conference call?
Well, I think it was pretty much, after the event profit booking. So there were a lot of expectation, and the numbers came pretty much in line with the expectation. So some amount of, profit booking was par for the course. So I won't read too much into that. I think as far as the management conference call is concerned, we would definitely like to hear about the little more about the plans about that CNG two-wheeler, which they are launching, and there are a lot of expectations being built around that. They're the first company to go live with this, and we would like to hear that. Second, I would also like to hear what's happening as far as the African exports are concerned. There were certain concerns, certain red flags as far as Nigeria is concerned, and Nigeria is a very large market for Bajaj Auto. Would like to hear what's happening in Nigeria. I'm reasonably confident they will cover that. Also, what is their forecast about the rural demand growth, and which will lead to some growth in numbers? I'd like to hear that as well. By and large, I think they've been delivering, and they've been delivering very, very well. Export have been a bit of a challenge a few quarters back, but now that also is back on track. And with the new CNG vehicle, I think they will move into a different orbit.
That's expected to be the big disruptor for Bajaj Auto. Let's talk about Telecom, because that's the other sector which was in focus today. Let me start with Bharti Hexacom because stock ended up in the green with a gain of nearly 7%. Two initiating coverages, two positive notes. One of them, JP Morgan, overweight rating, target price 1280. And the second one is IFL. They've got a buy rating, target price of 1267. So both JP Morgan and IFL see about a 10 to 15% upside in the stock from here on. The reason being that Bharti Hexacom is the best way to play the market repair theme in India. Tariffs have already gone up by 15-20%. We've seen the tariff hike take place, and the expectation is going forward we will see consistent tariff increases. And if you want to play that, then Bharti Hexacom is the best play. But the other stocks were also higher today. That's namely an Airtel and even a Vodafone Idea. And here the news is that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a petition by the telcos on providing or on the AGR dues. So the expectation is that, or the hope is that we will have some relief. The government, remember, is backing Vodafone Idea. They're keen that India has a 3 private player market, and therefore the street believes that we could get some government relief in the AGR dues. 50% of the AGR dues could be waived off. That is a number of 35,000 crore rupees of a relief for Vodafone Idea and 18,000 crore rupees for Bharti Airtel. In terms of per share value of this amount, for Vodafone Idea, it stands at 5 rupees. This 35,000 relief equates to 5 rupees per share. And for Airtel, it equates to about 30 rupees per share. Meanwhile, the telecom minister, Scindia, also met with the telcos and internet service providers. Bharti Airtel's chairman, Sunil Bharti Mittal, Jio chairman Akash Ambani were in attendance. Scindia said that they have identified the agenda for all 6 stakeholder committees and will develop an action plan with timelines. Listen in.
We've identified a rather deep agenda for all 3 committees. Now the members of these committees and us will be working together. These 6 committees are the backbone of the communications sector in India. And by forging these committees, we hope to take the sector forward.
Jay, Bharti Airtel, that's been the big mover, 40% plus return year to date. Do you see upside in the share prices? And what about Industars and Bharti Hexacom? We don't have too much by way of a history for Bharti Hexacom, given it's a recent listing, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, see, I've been bullish on Bharti Airtel for quite some time, since December of last year, and it's continuing to clock fresh record highs. But, it's getting very, very, stretched, and a lot of caution is required. If the next high were to come through, that will be definitely bringing in a deep profit booking. When it comes to Bharti Hexacom, 1,030, or if I were to assume the 1,030 that it made just last week is going to hold, then it has potential to clock even 1440 fresh 52-week highs. But as you rightly pointed out, it's got very limited history, but take that with a pinch of salt. But it looks bullish on the chart.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about Vedanta. Mr. Agarwal has been, he's been talking to bankers for the last year or so because he had a bit of a debt problem. But now suddenly he's turned his attention to the equity markets and he's gone ahead and raised some money for the company via the QIP route. Well, just run you through the basic details. The total size was at around 800 million odd, which was broken up into a base issue as well as a green shoe option. But we understand that during the course of the day, demand was quite strong, and that's why that 800 million was upsized to around $1 billion odd. So we'll have to see who are the participants in that QIP. How will they use these funds? Well, they have a big capex spend of around $3.5 billion over the next few years. They can also use it to retire some of the high-cost debt. And if this happens, then maybe they have some bargaining power with the credit agencies as well, asking for a rating revision. We'll have to see how that goes. Dilution of this QIP, going by the size of around 800 million odd, it'll be roughly around 4%. If it's $1 billion, it'll be closer to around 5% in terms of dilution. Remember, the promoter holding has been coming down, and the promoter holding last reported numbers around 59.3%. It'll get diluted a little bit more depending on what was the total QIP size. But they won't have the option of selling any shares for the next 60 days as per the regulations. Well, how will the Vedanta Resources manage that obligation that they have for the year at around $1.1 billion odd? They get brand fee payments from both Hindustan Zinc as well as Vedanta. The promoter entity sold a couple of percentage stake in the last month, that's in June itself. And dividend payouts, they've declared some dividend from Vedanta Limited, the listed entity, and in all probability they'll declare another 20 rupees odd. So that's how the promoter, that's Vedanta Resources, will be in a comfortable spot. You just break up the total valuation picture, you'll see that the Hindustan Zinc stake that they have, Vedanta Limited, of around 65% on, as well as aluminium business, they account for bulk of it. While the net debt number, it asks for a negative number in the SOTP. There are two potential upsides out here. One is on the net debt number, because of this QIP, it could be relatively lower, going by Phillip Capital's estimates for FY26. And the other one is the aluminium business, the EBITDA number could be relatively higher because they're looking at a lot of backward integration out there. And the cost of production itself could come down by around $250 per ton, which could be structural in nature, which will boost their EBITDA numbers. The risk, well, there's always a risk with Vedanta. One is, suppose they use the money from Vedanta Limited to help the promoter entity, that's Vedanta Resources. So that's a bit of an issue out there. The second one, suppose the delay in commissioning of these aluminium projects. And the third factor is, suppose they use the cash in the books for some unrelated business or some business that's going to give you lower return ratios. But all in all, this QIP looks to have worked well for Vedanta Limited, and it's for them to lose from here on. Well, Sudip, what's your view on Vedanta Limited?
Well, Nigel, I've been positive on Vedanta for, I think, last 6 months. Not on the back of this QIP, or we didn't know anything about this. But the fact this entire metal pack is doing well, and the way US markets and US economy is poised, rate cut is in the offing, whether 2 or less, we'll have to see, but definitely rate cut is coming. With rate cut, I think metals will get further traction. Under these circumstances, I think, whether it's a Hindustan Zinc, whether it's the aluminium business, whether it's even cane, I think all of these are going to do well and, reward the shareholders handsomely. Also, the split which the company is doing, Vedanta is getting divided into 6 companies. That should eventually lead to a lot of value unlocking. That's our belief. And, I saw the sum of parts valuation, which you had put up. It's about 500 plus. That's definitely likely. That's what we believe. It can go even further once the actual demerger happens.
Okay, all right. Continue to remain positive on Vedanta Limited. And the stock actually from the May highs has corrected close to around 10%. This could, call for the next round of a rally. Let's see how that goes. Let's focus on Coal India, one of the biggest gainers today. Phillip Capital came out with the note. They've initiated coverage, buy rating, target price of 600 level. They believe that the growth story is here to stay for a longer duration. And let's highlight 4 big reasons. One is the industry tailwind itself. They believe India's growing power needs will boost thermal capex requirement and in turn coal demand as well. So they put out a few numbers. Basically, there'll be incremental demand for coal. The second factor is because there's going to be incremental demand for coal, they are factoring in a volume CAGR of close to around 8% over the next 3 years, that's 2024 to 2027. So that's another factor that will work in their favor. On the profitability aspect, they're saying the EBITDA per ton will hold at around 500 rupees per ton, which is better than what we have seen in the pre-COVID levels. So they're saying that the profitability as well will be relatively better. And the final factor that they're highlighting is that the company is sitting on a good cash balance of around 27,000 crores odd. They're saying, yes, they have a capex that's lined up of more than 20,000 crores, but the cash generation will be more than the cash burn. And that's why the cash per share is likely to move up to around 69 rupees from the last recorded number of around 44 rupees. They've highlighted a few risks. If there's a fall in international coal prices, suppose there's a delay in construction, ramp up of capacities, and what if the private miners ramp up sooner than expected? Those could be the risks. But all in all, that was the stock of the day, up close to around 3%. Jeg, let's come across to you for this one. Technically, how's the stock looking? It went through a bit of a lull phase, but now it's back to winning ways at around 510. Where's it headed?
Yeah, Coal India looks good in the medium term and long term, but the short term is looking a bit shaky. Even in the short term, that it might be due for the higher highs towards 540, 550. But it's slowing down in momentum considerably. But some amount of profit booking will do the medium-term trend a lot of good. A pause to refresh is required for the stock.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. Now let's get to the corporate corner, some of the important voices that we heard through the day. So first up, let's get to Anthony Waste Handling, and that gained after a strong business update. The management said that the order book stands at 8,300 crore rupees. They added that they were aiming for a revenue CAGR of 20 to 25% over the next 5 years, with margins at between 20 to 24%.
And as we inch closer to Budget 2024, Aadhar Housing Finance Management expressed its anticipation for income tax benefits. They said that they were hoping for enhancement under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana to 3 lakh rupees, alongside expanding coverage to more locations. Speaking of the growth numbers, the company said that they're targeting a 15 to 20% AUM growth, with NIMs holding at around that 8.5%.
And last but not the least, we spoke to Vinayak Chatterjee, co-founder at InfraVision Foundation. He expects the capex outlay to be increased by 25 to 30% in the upcoming budget. He also requests the government to reduce the GST of 28% on cement to 12%, as he believes it will have a positive impact on the economy. Well, with that, it's time for a short break. We'll get to our popular segment, D Street Chatter, on the other side, and also the big events to watch tomorrow. Well, it's time now for our segment D Street Chatter. Nimesh is joining in. Hi, Nimesh. A quiet sort of a session, listless, consolidation. What have you picked up?
Hi, Rima. You're right that it was a day of consolidation. The volumes have actually dried up a bit. Institutional participation has indeed been on a lower side for the last couple of days, and that seems to be the trend today as well. But there were a lot of individual stocks which are buzzing in trade. The first name is Zomato. That stock was under pressure today after a very large block. The stock ended 4% lower. The seller was a domestic mutual fund. They were large holders in Zomato, and they've sold a big stake today, and hence that stock was under pressure. So that was the first name. The second stock is Westcon Engineering. A small stock, but that was buzzing in trade on large volumes as well. I understand some HNI interest is back, and also the street is anticipating some corporate development, large possibility of a fundraising in the subsidiary business. That's the reason why that stock was buzzing in trade. The third name is IndusInd Bank. Well, the stock has been consolidating, been pretty much flat for the last couple of days, but looks like the selling pressure is largely over, and some sort of buying interest has resumed at larger FI desk in IndusInd Bank at these levels. And the last name is Techno Electric. Well, the stock in the last 1 month has consolidated, but over the last 3 to 6 months, the stock has been on a tear. In fact, in the 6 months, the stock has almost doubled. And now I understand the company is likely to raise funds via QIP very soon. So that's the reason why that stock was in focus today.
Okay, thanks for that, Nimesh. Well, let's wind up the show then. But before we do that, Ekta is joining us to tell us all the key events to watch for the next trading session. Ekta?
Well, yes, in terms of events to watch, well, tomorrow is a market holiday on account of Muharram, but separately there will be a couple of results to watch out for. For example, we have Asian Paints, LTI Mindtree, Telecom Engineering, the likes of Hathway, which will be releasing numbers as well. And in terms of the global space, we have the likes of the Fed Beige Book, Fed Waller's speech from the US, along with the industrial production data, housing starts change, and building permits to watch out for in terms of a couple of global data points from the US.
Ekta, thank you very much for that. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Markets Forward. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned.